Hey guys, welcome back to PHT TV and welcome to another RF7 versus episode. So
I'm excited.
Yeah, Cornwall's. It is a little tight up here.
A little tight?
A little tight. So if you have not seen the Fortes versus RF7s or the Heresys versus the RF7s, make sure you check those guys out. But today we are moving on to the Cornwalls versus the RF7s. And what do you think? Who do you think is going to win?
I don't know. In this room, it's you know, because of the size of the room and they're so tight together, it does cause some problems. But imaging issues, we had to get up and do some tweaking on the imaging so we could both have a little bit of a good center.
And any room is like that. You're not going to have a perfect room for any speaker.
No. But the bigger we go in this room, the harder it is because there's literally 4.5 feet between the two center speakers, you know, Cornwall and RF7. So it's tight. It is tight. It's not as tight as when we had the Lascalas in here.
That's true. That is true. Now, one thing that you guys have asked this in the comments before, which is which. So if you're watching the remote as opposed to watching the little, where's it going to be? Let's say it's either right here. This is where it's saying whether it's the Cornwalls or the RF7s. If you're watching the remote instead, A is going to be the Cornwalls. B is going to be RF7s. So we're going to start off on the Cornwalls and we'll switch over to the RFs. Actually, let's start RF7s because it's RF7 versus things. Mm-hmm. So we'll start off on the RF7s.
I wonder why you had RF7s on B. See, they should be, never mind.
Yeah, whatever, Trey.
OCD.
I hooked stuff up and that's where it landed.
Yeah, I know. I noticed the SPL meter was set fast last time, so I set it to slow so it'd settle a little more.
You guys can read a little better, hopefully.
It was hard to keep up with it. It was quick and so fast.
But it was, yeah.
But so this will help with that. On top of that, we moved it to C weighting instead of A weighting. Because C weighting gives you bottom end, 40 hertz and down, where A weighting cuts it off at 40 hertz. So we're missing. That's why I laugh at all the laws written across the country in these small towns, 85 dB, 50 feet from the street, but they all do it at A weighting, which is the low end's cut out of it. So you can still be bumping.
Where all the disturbances happen.
Yeah, and it not show up on their meter because their meter's not reading that.
So we're going full frequency now.
Full frequency now and slow so we can maybe get an idea of what kind of SPL we're playing with.
You guys can actually see it on the cameras. So what do you want to start with today?
I don't know, man. Both of these speakers are pretty rocking. Let's do something rocking.
Rocking.
Rock out a little bit?
Let's see. You gonna start with Draekon?
Sure.
All right, out the gates with some metal today. This is Draekon, the value of all. Now, we should note, first off, before we get into anything else, there is a difference in sensitivity here. So we said it was 99 on the RF7s and 102 on the Cornwall.
Right, so 3 dB. So 3 dB will present itself as a noticeable difference.
Yes.
Audible difference.
But that said, there was definitely some other differences there to notate.
There were. The three-way in that mid-range horn is a lot more in your face from the Cornwall than the two-way RF7.
And we've said it a lot of times throughout these Heritage versus RF7s. It is a completely different. It's the studio versus live sound. We've said it multiple times.
It really
sounds
is
more live in the Cornwalls than it does in the RF7s. Those Cornwalls are beasts.
Yeah, just the moving mass difference. Weight of the cone, size of the magnet. She went through all that when you tore the RF7s down, and we might be able to take a couple of video shots from something. Yeah, screenshots to do that. The obvious difference is you've got probably quadruple the voice coil weight on the RF7 as you do the Cornwall. And Paul, Paul was a smart old sucker, man. he did things that are different than they do today. And he had some reasoning behind that. The efficiency of that paper cone woofer and the tone you get off of that paper cone woofer is a lot more dead than one off of any other type of woofer, simply because the paper resonance is so much lower. So having that speaker, that plus using a relatively small voice coil, a relatively small X-Max, I think X-Max is 10 millimeters on those drivers. The cone is a sinusoidal wave surround. A lot of people look at it as a accordion surround, but it's not. It's not a real sharp edge at the bend. It's a radius, and that keeps that surround pliable for a much longer period of time. And that radius is a lot more durable, as it is more consistent in its return spring, or spring constant, where it comes back to its neutral point.
And keep it tighter.
It comes back to that point better than some that aren't shaped like that. There's a lot of differences in driver shapes. The rubber that they use on the RF7 driver does exactly the same thing. It's got a very good memory. That's the word I was looking for a while ago, is memory. It's got a very good memory to it. That butyl rubber has been used in audio speakers for a long, long time, and it works very well for what it is. We use it in a lot of other things out there in the world, car tires, but they don't, they hold their shape well once you put it in shape. So it's just a whole different philosophy of how that's built versus this is built, One's not necessarily better or more accurate than the other. It's just a different beast. Well, we had talked about comparing these speakers because people wanted to hear what's the Cornwall versus RF7 and our Heritage line versus the RF7 and our reference line for that matter. And that's a valid question because people want to decide whether they want to spend that much floor space. I mean, it's twice as wide. Absolutely twice as wide. I haven't done the measurements, but looking at it, it's twice as wide. And that's shall we say, a heritage look. In other words, it's a historical look in that speaker, where the tall tower is more of a newer, modern look. One's not necessarily better than other on all things. They both have their prominent things. Let's face it, the Cornwall should have a little better bass response just because of the motor board that it has, right? The sound board, the board that the drivers are screwed to.
The big old face.
Big old face. I mean, the bigger soundboard you have, the better, or the different outcomes going to be from the front of that speaker. Think of a air bubble coming off the front of a little wand or a pipe where you make, when you were a kid, making bubbles in the air. you want something for that air bubble to be able to close around and float away. The surface for it to close around and float away on the RF7 is more narrow than that of the Cornwall. So it's got more time and more capability to sound off of that board than it does off the other board. I relate it back to things that everybody's played with, and I'm trying not to make it too silly, but it's true. I mean, we've all had those little bubble pipes where you blew it and it'd blow up in your face and get your face all wet with the soap. It's because of the shape and the size and the way that thing's built. Same thing happens true when it comes to audio and sound off the front of a speaker. That's why we, in the lab, they go through and pull polar curves or polar patterns. They'll look at the horizontal and the vertical pattern of the speaker to try to make sure that it's giving a solid coverage pattern over its suggested area, and as little behind it as you can. Mm-hmm. That way you're getting all the force of that sound moving in the same direction.
More control.
Yeah. Well, that and just sheer volume and less distortion. Because the more you put behind the speaker, the more it's got to bounce out. Right? It's got to hit something and come back to you if it's going the opposite direction. That's why I'd love to see the ports on the front of this thing instead of the back, but it wouldn't
on the RF7s?
On the RF7, but it wouldn't be near as pretty. I like the ports coming to the front. It's just a personal preference. It also determines how far you need to get that speaker RF7 away from the wall so you can get the response out of that port that you're looking for and not being impeded by the wall. Which in this small room, and one's closer to a corner than the other, and rear ported, that may be part of the things we hear in the differences between these speakers. And it may be how it's picked up on the mic in this room as well.
Yeah, obviously we wouldn't have it staggered like this if we only had a regular set in the room, so they'd both be in the corners, just whichever ones we decided to have. But now back to the ports though, with the RF7s, if they put them front ported instead, we would have an issue with the dual chamber in the back because there's a port per woofer, so we'd only be able to get one for the bottom, and they'd have to
the physics there don't work very well, so that's why they do that, because you could do it, but you'd have to lengthen the port and turn it and come down, right? Now one's ported different than the other lengthwise, and they're very proportional to the size of the cabinet it's in. So they're already different, I suspect, but it would be a challenge to get both ports coming out the front on that speaker.
And it'd look interesting.
It would look interesting.
We've got enough of a tangent. What do you want to listen to next? Do you want to calm down a bit?
Let's chill.
Do you want to throw that new one? Well, not new one, but we haven't listened to Seth Jones in a while.
Seth Jones. This is another cut mastered over at Combover Studios, and they did a really good job on this cut.
Yeah, this one is called Lonely, Lonely Self by Seth Jones.
Time when I think of my life, I just think of you throwing me around. You gave me the world, and for such a small girl, had no problem tearing it down. Once again I look to you, but this time I don't see you. It indicates a love forevermore. Clarity to understand, sound off on my command. I'm leaving that I can't afford. I can't believe that I did this to me. My naivety left me so blind. I trusted you, thought you knew
So,
There's a lot of things happening in that cut.
yes.
I don't know if you were paying close attention. That mandolin would come in every once in a while, just on the left side, going dink, 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 just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the drum kit was mic'd up and spread out pretty cool. And I thought the hi-hat, when he was doing his little on the hi-hat, it was real poignant in one spot. And I could hear it no matter which set of speakers we were listening to. Mm-hmm. The mix followed through on both cuts. I mean, both products. The Cornwalls are louder. The Cornwalls are a little more in your face. There's a little more tinkle there. You know, that tweeter having three-way makes a difference in how much brightness there is on the top end.
And the size and shape of the cabinet, the resonance in the Cornwalls too.
Yeah. It does make a difference.
Yeah. And do you want to talk about how you saw me moving around? You could talk about how it was loading on the walls, like you mentioned.
Yeah, as you moved around, I'm sure you noticed the bass response gets a lot better to the outside. The more closer to the wall you get, it's loading really hard along that wall, and so we've got a antinode or a suck out from bass response kind of in the middle of the room. You might notice in the video today, the chairs are set just a little different than they were. That was us trying to use the chair as a bass trap in the room. We had it moved up and moved back, and it sounded probably better there than it did before, so we left it that way. This really isn't a fair comparison in my head. I love both of these speakers. I like the way the RF7 sounds, how controlled, I guess is a good word for it. It's very controlled. I get the full bottom end in the room.
But we both have a preference towards the live sound anyways.
We do.
So if you're more into the studio sound, the RF7's maybe the way to go for you.
Right. And don't think of that as theater versus music. It's
They
not.
both do great in theater.
They both do great in theater, and they both do great in music. The RF7 does a really good job overall. I mean, it really does. It's smooth, it's controlled. Like you said, it sounds a lot like it's in a studio. You're listening from a studio point of view. Articulate. I could hear all the small things in the recordings. The Cornwall is just that beast. It is in your face, live, you know.
It's a favorite for a reason.
Yeah, whether it was and you know, I've heard for years, I've been with the company for a long time, I've heard for years how this speaker is best for jazz, and this speaker is best for rock, and this speaker's
Yeah.
That speaker was kicking ass on Draekon.
Yeah.
And you turn around and play country music on it, and it kicked ass there too. So, you know, I know. If it's a good speaker, it's a good speaker. Yeah. If it's a bad recording, it's a bad recording.
Exactly. We should do some more.
Yes.
Now, we've been saying this wrong the whole time. It's mycelium. Mycelium. We've been saying mycelium.
Sorry, Matt.
Sorry, Matt. All right. This is Mycelium by Matt Sommers. was interesting. Did you, as the high frequency, there was one spot that I was hearing in the Cornwalls that I wasn't hearing in the RF7s.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. But the RF7 sounded significantly more controlled to a degree.
Yeah.
So,
But, you know, for example, when the bass guitar kicked in, the tone of
we're not
that.
going to know for a second, but when I go back to edit these, you're going to probably not see our faces because everything's going to be vibrating on the camera. So I apologize for that. You guys are going to have to watch the wobblies instead of.
And yes, we do listen that loud.
We can't recommend it, or we're going to get lawsuits. For
Yeah, no, I
Hearing
don't. I don't
damage.
suggest anybody listen loud enough to hurt themselves. And 112 dB is typically the threshold of pain.
Mm-hmm.
We were hitting 112, 113 dB at times. So you know, it was cranking in here. But you know, there's a big difference in price between these speakers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason for a big difference in price between these speakers, because the Cornwall is just a beast. I mean, the RF7 gets loud and it sounds clean, and you know, it does a really good job, but the difference is really night and day.
We were playing out of the RS7s first, and as soon as we started, there's stuff moving around in this room. If there's loose things on your walls, if there's loose things on shelves, you'll find out pretty quick with either one of these speakers.
True. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was moving the room, energizing the room quite well.
Yes. And I would say, I don't want to say that I had a favor on those. I favored towards the RF7s, but I thought the RF7s sounded cleaner.
They do. It was.
They're more controlled, I think is the best way to put it. But the Cornwalls, definitely beefier in the bass response. And definitely, again, a more live sound. But that is a studio track. I feel like it was a studio track, and that's why I lean more towards the RF7s on that one, just because they are more studio sounding speakers.
Right. The liveliness of the three-way, it helped that cut, just that tinkle that you were talking about on the top end. It was there, and I think that comes because you've got a little more definition, you know, with the tweeter than you do with just a single HF driver in the RF7.
Yeah. And like I said, I prefer the RF7s, but I think I'm going to call it tied on those for me personally. Because like I said, there was the RF7s had more studio sound, and that's a studio track, but the Cornwalls, I heard things that I didn't hear in the RF7s.
Correct.
So that one was a good one.
Yeah, I enjoyed that cut.
Like that one.
Yeah, I did too. Which is why I wanted you to crank on it, because I like the way it worked.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, that's good.
Let's
Good
see.
stuff.
What else do we have?
Yeah, I enjoy thinking, pointing out all these artists allowed us to use these cuts for free. Mm-hmm. They just ask that we share who they are, so we constantly put that information into
Always
the
in the
videos,
description. You guys can always look in the description if you like these tracks. Download them, give them some love.
Yeah, they're out on several streaming and locations, and you can go get that information.
Mm-hmm. And I always put them in order too. So if you're looking for the first cut we played, it's going to be the first one in the description. So check it out. These guys are awesome. Let's go to. You want to go to Trey Johnson?
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
You guys want to see Trey stomping his foot?
Yeah. Both of us.
All right. This is Trey Johnson. Bring My Baby Home, starting in the RF7s.
Worries and troubles all weigh me down. Burden so heavy, help can't be found. Broken down heart, I'm lost and alone. Somebody bring my baby back home. Said somebody please, somebody please. I'm on my knees, honey, won't you come on home? 'Cause this heartache here ain't leaving soon. Drowning in tears, midnight noon. Breaking down and holding on. Somebody bring my good girl home. Said somebody please, somebody please. Darling, I'm on my knees, honey. I can't do it on here alone. Somebody bring that girl back home. Said somebody please. Somebody please. Y'all, I'm on my knees, honey. Come on home. Come on. I said, come on back. I need you, girl. Walk your myself back through that door. I said, I'm on my knees, honey. Won't you come back home? Yeah. How's that?
So I don't think there's been a single compare that we've done with a Heritage lineup with Trey Johnson where the Heritage didn't take it.
It just sounds like he's over there playing a guitar.
It does. I don't think I opened my eyes the whole time I was playing that. But we gotta bring up the sensitivity difference one more time. Yeah. Definitely a difference in volume when we're listening to these two, but that is not necessarily the motivation between choosing. It's just
I expect that to show up drastically in the microphone. Mm-hmm. So as they're listening back from this mic, which is where you're going to get most of they're going to get most of their music from anyway. That it's going to pick that up. That 3 dB will be picked up very dramatically in the mic. So and it's dramatic while we're sitting here listening to it. I expect it to be twofold output difference the way it sounds back when they listen to it on.
Yes.
The wife and I was listening last week after you posted, and she wanted to hear more of Draekon. she liked it, and then I told her who the drummer was. She liked it more. But yeah, it was She was like, "There's such a difference between them. It's the microphone. Mm-hmm. There is a difference between them, yes,
for sure.
But it was nowhere near the way it represented in the microphone in real life.
Yeah.
So I like
hear him in person. We got to say it once a video. Hear him in person.
Yeah. Every time we're on here, we tell people this is just for fun. Go listen to the blasted thing.
This is a jump off point. This is a place to get started to hear our opinions, but go hear them in person before you before you pull the trigger.
Right. If you need a place to do that, Paducah Home Theater has the capability of doing that for you.
Yep. All of them in one room.
Yeah. However you want to do that, reach out to those guys and they'll hook you up. Mm-hmm. I bring it up because they not only sponsor the channel, but they're really good at helping folks do that kind of thing. Make that decision and give them a chance to actually sit down and listen. And there's not many places in the country that you can actually do that.
And it's a home environment too. It's a house.
Yeah.
So you can go in there and listen to
it's a house.
You go in there and listen to them in a house environment, not in some big box store where it's just a giant open warehouse.
It's very important that you actually get some seat time.
Exactly. So, synopsis. It's RF7s are going to be a better fit for some environments. They're going to be a more aesthetically pleasing to somebody in a more home and a more modern environment potentially. Price point is definitely a good factor. They are amazing speakers. Let's get that out of the way. They are awesome. I love these RF7s have been. They probably spent the longest in the studio of any of the.
That's right. You've had these in here for quite some time now.
Yeah. Now, why would you buy the Cornwalls? They have a fuller sound. I'll let you take it first.
Yeah, you're right. The tone of the speaker, the output of the speaker. You're going to buy something like that because of its fit and finish. Where it is made in, both of them made in Hope, Arkansas, but mostly with the wood veneer, the old school look, if you will. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a house that works well with, or your eclectic taste is that way, yeah. it fits in well, aesthetically. Yeah. From an acoustic standpoint,
with the black finish though. The black finish and that silver cloth, the silver girl cloth, that does fit in modern environments as well.
True.
The cherry, not as much in the more modern sense, but you can still get the Cornwalls in the more modern system as well. So
true. Oh, I wasn't trying, but
I think I said it like that. Though.
it's because of its physical size and shape. It does lend itself to a more old school look, mm-hmm. and that's all I was getting at. But yes, let's face it, that speaker hasn't changed a whole lot since 1959, 1960. You know, it kind of went to that format in 1960. They recently changed the mid-range and the tweeter, and they've messed with where the woofer landed in the cabinet a little bit over the years. But for all general purposes, that speaker's the same. And
it is a heritage.
Yes, it is, and it holds its heritage well. Mm-hmm. You know, they've added, you know, Roy's added some Tractrix ports to this cabinet, which changed the way that port chuff happened and where it happened in tuning. He changed the mid-range horn on this over the earlier versions to have a much wider, bigger mid-range horn, that 90-60 coverage pattern. I think is one of the better ways to do a mid-range horn. And it being Tractrix only helps with the way it lets go of that bubble. Same with the HF driver. The RF7 uses the same technology in the horn, in the ports. Chris has done the horn on that speaker and using has its own special technology in the horn with the rubber front. That Roy actually played with that years and years ago in a pro speaker where he put convoluted foam on the inside of the horn, and it changed the way that horn operated dramatically. So having that tactile soft surface on that horn actually changes the way that horn responds. So it is a not just a fit and finish thing, it is an acoustic thing that they did there. So, you know, props to both of those engineers for having forethought to go after the last little bit that's left, you know, going after those that last 10% of the speaker's capabilities is classic good engineer. You know,
get it to 100.
It's easy to get that 90%. It's that last 10% it's hard to do. And let's face it, every driver, every speaker in the world takes electrical energy, goes through a mechanical energy phase to give you acoustic energy output. So you're going through 3 different phases of physics there to make this thing happen. The efficiency of that is piss poor. I mean, literally a speaker can only do about 1% of what it's given. So if all you get is 1% to start with, getting 99% of that 1 is pretty important. So, you know, having those engineers work for that last little bit to get it as good as it possibly can be is the sign of a good engineer in my mind. And I'd hope that others would agree with that. But I think Paul would agree with that because he was constantly looking to make things better.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, what's best for you, only you can decide that.
Correct.
Right. Hopefully we've given you guys some pointers and help steer you in the right direction. I think that's going to be about all we have for you this week on PHT TV.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. Do all the clicky and buttons and likings and
like and subscribes
and all that
down
good stuff.
Below.
I don't know why we keep saying that. Everybody knows they're supposed to do that, and if they don't, you know, we need to put something in there. You know, like if you like and subscribe, you get a Tootsie Roll or something. I don't know.
If you like and subscribe, Trey will come over to your house and shake your hand.
No. No.
No?
Trey's not traveling anywhere. You're lucky I made it to your house, dude.
If you like and subscribe, Trey will give you this smile. Over the camera.
Over the camera?
Over the camera, not in person.
I'll get both eyes go the same direction.
There you
How's
go.
that?
All right, guys. So like and subscribe below. I'm Jason.
I'm Trey.
We'll see you again next week for another episode of PHT TV.
I watch this from time to time.
It's because you're so beautiful.
I thought it was you.
Oh, maybe we should be smarter. Know how to read.
Huh?
I don't know how to read. And the worst part of it all is I never learned to read.
You know, it really is. It's a professional driver. It's something you'd expect to see in a PA speaker. And that's not to degrade this capability of the driver. Mm-hmm. You know, those parts and PA speakers are just as quality as the ones in these high-end speakers.
I think there was a comment or two about that. Those just look like PA drivers, and I was like, that's because they have their roots in PA systems. What's wrong with that?
Well, and let's think about that. In the PA world, that speaker's going to see probably 50% or more abuse than it would ever see in a home atmosphere. Mm-hmm. You've got a Corvette and you're driving it downtown 30 miles an hour all its life. What do you expect it to do? Live forever. That's what I expect it to do.
That's what comes along with that 10-year warranty on these new guys.
Right.
They don't expect it to go anywhere anytime soon.
You put that Yugo on the freeway and try to run 120 miles an hour, you're going to have trouble. I talk about that in amplifiers, related the same way.
Headroom.
Headroom, everywhere you can get it, headroom.